population, community, and ecosystem. The population of people on Earth is increasing every day. Scientists have measured the growth to be 3 new people every second. But people are not the only population that you can count. Another example of a population is all of the owls in a forest. A population is a group of the same organisms living in an area. Sometimes different populations live in the same area. For example, there could be a population of mice and a population of pine trees. Many populations in the same area are called a community. Within the community, populations interact. In the forest, a population of owls interact with mice. Owls hunt and kill mice as they obtain food they need to survive. In a forest, non-living things interact with the community. Mountains shape the land, rivers provide water to the animals, soil gives a place for the trees to grow, and the sunlight provides energy to the plant. An ecosystem is a term that scientists give to all of the living and non-living things in the area. A forest is just one example of an ecosystem. Another is the desert. A group of scorpions is a desert population. All of the scorpions, birds, reptiles, and other living things are the desert community. Add in abiotic factors to complete the desert ecosystem. Populations are all members of one species. Communities are many populations. Ecosystems include communities and the non-living parts. Population, community, and ecosystem.
Okay, so I clicked the wrong button there. Sorry about that. All right, moving on to our presentation. Geographers study information such as how many people live in an area. We've studied this before in previous lessons, but we're going to really be focusing in on one particular aspect called the population. So why people live there is what geographers look into, and how populations change. Some are crowded, while others may be. Population density, that new term, is a measure of the number of people living in an area. It is expressed as persons per square mile. Let's watch a video from Planet Lacey that explains it a bit more.
Population density with Minecraft. Population density means how many people there are living in an area, and it doesn't matter how big or small that area is. In some places, there aren't many people, and we call this a sparsely populated area. Now, the opposite to that is when you have a lot of people living in one area, and we call this a densely populated area. Now I'm going to show you an example of this. Here I have 2 squares. Both of these squares are exactly the same size. They are 10 blocks long, so they are 10 meters squared. The red square on the left is going to be our densely populated area. On the flip side, the green square is going to be sparsely populated. Right, it's time to populate these areas. Let's start by putting the villages in one of these areas. We're going to start with the green. Now I'm going to put 2 villages, 1 and 2, into this area. As you can see, there's not really a lot of room being taken up. We call this sparsely populated. Now another way that you could put this is that it's a low density area. These guys, as you can see here, have got plenty of room to themselves. They have all this space and there's only 2 of them to take it up. Now, let's have a look at the red square instead and start putting some people in that. Now remember, red square is going to be our densely populated area, so there's going to need to be a lot of people compared to green. That's it, lots and lots of villagers. Lovely. Now this is very, very densely populated. There's lots of people there. Now another way to put this, of course, is that it is a high density area. Okay, so just to recap, here we have our densely populated and our sparsely populated areas. Now it's important to remember that when we look at an area, it's not always going to be this small. So let's take a look at a little village that I've got ready over here. Now, I've surrounded this whole village with a very, very long wall. This wall is 100 meters long either side. So the area is 100 meters squared. Let's take a little look inside. Okay, so as you can see, in this particular village there are quite a lot of people. In fact, there's more people than there was in the red square that we had before. But because it's a really big area, it's still actually quite sparsely populated. Okay, so there are some things to remember. Population density is all about the number of people in an area, and it doesn't matter if that area is big or small. If all of these villages were crammed into the small red square from before, it would be very, very densely populated. But because they have a lot of space here in this village, the area is sparsely populated because they have more room. Okay, so here's our key definitions. You've got population density, the number of people living in an area, and that area can be big or small. You've got sparsely populated, and that means
All right, clicked the right button that time. So let's move on. So you should have a better understanding of that new terminology in this lesson that you need to learn is population density. So whether it's a densely or sparse, that's a definition that geographers look at when they look at population. Your population, or the total number of people in a given area, determines a great deal about the place in which you live. Populations influence the variety of businesses that might be located in an area or that are needed, the types of transportation that are needed in an area, the number of schools and the types of schools, and the types of housing that might be needed in a particular area. The more people per square mile in a region, the more crowded or dense it is. Japan, for example, has a population density of 880 people per square mile. That is a high population density. In Japan, they have a term they call train stuffing. It's actually tragically funny, but it's because of their overcrowding. Let's flip over to a video so you can learn what train stuffing is in Japan. see. So they got everybody in. That is insane. Imagine being stuffed in like that. So that is a densely populated area. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, remember I had said that Japan has 880 people per square mile. In contrast, Iceland has something called a very low population density. It has 3 people per square mile. Japan, 880 per square mile. Iceland, 3 people per square mile. Check out the difference. Remember the train station. Now let's look at Iceland. Iceland is just so gorgeous. I love that country. It's amazing. So let's continue on with our lesson. So, how do populations change? Migration. That's another new term for this lesson for today. Migration is the process of moving from one place to live to another. Now, this can be with animals. You've heard of migrating animals, but it can also be people too. In the last 200 years, Earth's human population has exploded. Let's watch a video from Science Insider that geographers and scientists believe is the track that we humans took as we evolved and populated the world. For thousands of years, our population growth was just slow and steady. But by the 1800s, better healthcare and improved food production supported tremendous population. And because of those two factors, better healthcare and improved food production, the population has exploded. To wrap things up, I want to flip over to a brain pop video to understand how this explosion impacts our Earth.
I can't move over. You move over. It's not my fault this bus is so crowded. Dear Tim and Moby, how many people can fit on the Earth? From Manny. That's something Moby and I are wondering too. But it's not really a question of how many people can physically fit on the Earth. The issue is whether or not Earth has the resources to support us all. Not all the world is as packed as this bus, but like this bus, the Earth also has a carrying capacity. Oh, that's a relief. A population is the total number of individuals of a particular species in a particular area. Our planet can only support so many populations at once. Our species, Homo sapiens, came on the scene a couple of 100,000 years ago. The human population grew little by little. But then, 200 years ago, everything changed. The population exploded, and now the Earth, with its limited resources, is having trouble keeping up. We're using up natural resources like fossil fuels and producing a whole lot of waste. And human activities, like clearing forests, have a harsh effect on the ecological system and on our animal populations. Why did the population explode? Well, around that time, there were many improvements in medicine, sanitation, and nutrition. People started living longer, and more babies survived to become adults. Those adults had more babies, and so on. Usually for a species, this is a good thing. But as far as resources go in some areas, humans are really starting to push the limit. Right now, the world population is a whopping 7 billion people or so, and that number gets bigger every minute. The number of humans on the planet is expected to pass 8 billion in the 2020s and 9 billion in the 2040s. In order to support all those people, we're really going to need to make some changes. Well, there are plenty of things we can do to reduce the amount of resources human beings are using. We can reduce our water and electricity consumption, stop overpackaging factory products, and work on alternative energy sources like solar power and wind power. There you go. Recycling is a great way to reduce the amount of resources we use. Although it might be a good idea to drink it before we recycle the can.
And you know what that means. It is officially quiz time. You had a lot of new terms that you learned in this lesson. So now I need you to go back to your agenda, click on Lesson Quiz, and good luck.